Welcome back to the Bioinformatics CRO podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Jason Mellad, co-founder and CEO of OtoImmune, as the company steps into public view. Jason's path spans Cambridge-trained scientist, biotech operator, and venture builder, and now he's channeling that experience into a precision immunology company that publicly describes itself as founded by and for autoimmune sufferers. In this conversation, we're going to unpack what autoimmune is, why this problem matters, how Jason's career led him here, and what it takes to build something genuinely useful at the intersection of biology, data, and patient need. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Grant. Great to be here.
So for listeners meeting autoimmune for the first time today, what is the company?
So autoimmune is a precision immunology company. We recognize that oncology is decades ahead of the immunology field. Today, in most places, at least in Western geographies, if you have a tumor, it's sequenced, and that information is used to inform care. So the genetic mutational landscape is mapped out. You can start to stratify the patients in terms of progression of disease, what they may or may not respond to in terms of drugs, and also understanding the severity and grading, and even the origin, in many cases, of the tumor. In immunology, you're lucky if you get anything more than basic testing, and then it's trial by error. Try this front line of care. If that doesn't work, we'll try something else. It can take years for people to get diagnosed because the symptoms are quite vague, and there's just not that precision that so many sufferers need. So autoimmune, my co-founder Dan and I set it up last year so that we could fix that problem. Bring precision by leveraging multi-omics and advanced informatics to really help drive the field forward.
Beyond the general problem, is there a particular experience that made you feel this company needed to exist?
Yes, so I can speak personally for myself. My mother-in-law, Mirto, has rheumatoid arthritis and has been battling it for several years, decades. And my husband and I, we had our kids during COVID, and we're so grateful that we were able to bring them to Greece finally when the pandemic ended so they could meet their grandparents. And because she was on methotrexate, a really harsh chemotherapeutic drug that's frontline for a lot of rheumatoid arthritis patients, her immune system was completely knackered. And so when she met her grandkids for the first time and gave them a big hug, she caught a nursery cold, like so many of us do. But in her case, because she didn't have the immune system, it had been suppressed by the meds, she was knocked out for weeks. And it was awful. And I will never forget the moment when she came into the living room and she was in tears and she told me, either I can take this medicine to use my hands or I can be with my grandchildren, but I can't have both. And that was a light bulb moment for me, because until that moment, autoimmunity is something I'd heard of. I hadn't studied it, but I didn't know anybody in my family who had it. Turns out that a lot of people, women in particular, are suffering in silence, and that is very common, over 10% of the global population and increasing. And people like my mother-in-law have to go from doctor to doctor, bouncing around from treatment to treatment, trying to get care, and it's just not good enough. That was a turning point for me.
And why is this the right moment to talk publicly about autoimmune?
I think it's the right moment, not only because we're launching and we've pulled everything together with my amazing team, but it's because we know that the pace of medicine, precision, the ability and access to things like whole genome sequencing, AI, and all of these different tools, we're now at the intersection where people are more aware of autoimmune conditions and how important they are, that there's more attention from pharma developing a pipeline of drugs to treat these chronic conditions. And we have the informatic tools available to really understand the diagnosis and stratification for care. So it's now the perfect moment where all of these elements are intersecting.
When you use the phrase precision immunology, what does that mean in practice?
In practice, it means taking the right information longitudinally to not only diagnose, and in some cases prevent, but in reality characterize the unique immune system that each of us has. Our company name Auto comes from a Yoruba word which means unique, and we chose that with intention because we believe each of us has a unique immune system. It's informed by our genetics and it changes over time. And so that means that generic treatment pathways, generic bits of advice you might read online is not going to be suitable for most people. So precision is by definition required for immunology because it is something that's so unique to us as individuals and evolves over time. You need to also have that longitudinal view as well. And we want to provide both. Not only snapshots of analysis, but also longitudinal, joined up analyses.
And what patients do you want to focus on first, and why start there?
So we've mapped out a wide number of personas, and it's something that we spent a lot of time working on early days. We interviewed over 5,000 patients and clinicians. We've all have lived experience. And my co-founder, Dan, has a diagnosed inflammatory arthritis. It's an autoimmune condition, and most of our team members have autoimmune or autoinflammatory conditions. But we wanted to make sure that as we are building out the platform, it was very clear that different personas had to be supported. So whether or not you have a family history, and we call you a vigilant person, or if you've got unexplained symptoms that seem quite vague, but it could be your immune system, all the way through to somebody who's just newly received a diagnosis, certain people who are unfortunately experiencing multiple flares, and then finally, when someone is in stable remission. So the platform we're building, we believe, will support people at all stages of those journeys, from just proactively looking after their health, all the way through diagnosis and through to remission, and hopefully make each one of those transitions easier. To start off with, we're very keen to find individuals who have undiagnosed symptoms and have been floating around in the system for some time, and for those who've just been recently diagnosed and are dealing with the magnitude of that diagnosis, which is now a lifetime change for them.
What are the core ingredients of your approach?
So at the very basic level, we have a digital health platform. So we take in information from symptom tracking, medications our individuals are using, their family history, their personal health history, metadata, height, weight, you name it, and bring all of that together to build out a solid foundation. The next level up is we like to bring in whole genome sequencing. Not everybody is able to access their genome today. We want to make that as democratized as possible because we feel that everyone in the future will have their whole genome sequence and it'll be very informative for care. So that's the solid foundation. And your germline genome in particular, which doesn't change that much over time except for somatic mutations that can occur, your germline mutation is important as that foundation. Then we start to layer in other omics on top. So blood biomarkers, inflammatory markers, lipid profiles, and just keep stacking and stacking, gut health profiling, and build up that case of real-world evidence coming from wearables that are integrated, so your exercise, how much sleep you're getting, the quality of your sleep, your metadata, genetics, blood test, gut health, and bring it all together for what we call integrated insights.
In a noisy world of AI, diagnostics, and precision medicine, what do you want autoimmune to be known for?
We want to be known for impact. I think a lot of people think on AI as a big disruptor, which it is, and there's a bit of a land grab where everyone's saying, I've got AI, you've got AI, everyone's got AI. We are less focused on the how and more about the what was achieved. So we are very clear on why we're doing it. We are clear on all the tools that we're using for how we're going to make it happen. But what I want autoimmune to be remembered for and known for is we actually had a positive impact in patients' lives. We were able to get people diagnosed sooner with more accurate diagnoses and on the right treatments. We were able to help people avoid getting ill in the first place. For certain conditions, it looks like that might be possible. We've helped pharma unlock their pipeline of drugs and make sure that they actually get more shots on goal that actually pass through all the way into clinic because those life-saving therapies are needed. It's impact. Not just another biotech, not just another fundraising startup, but we really made a positive impact in patients' lives, their families' lives, and society.
What evidence will you need to generate to earn real trust?
I think it starts with the authenticity of the team because we've used the platform, it's benefiting us, and so we can show to people that we understand we've lived experience, whether we're caregivers or diagnosed. Then our focus now is to really go out and solve very key issues that affect the different personas that I outlined earlier. So are you having trouble getting your GP to pay attention to you? Let's help with that. Are you trying to navigate which of the many immunosuppressant drugs you might have to use, the DMARDs, with your clinician? How can we help support that? Are you trying to understand your risk profile given that your mother and your father both have autoimmune conditions and you want to be able to catch something early so that you can intervene early? We can help with that as well. Are you looking to understand, once you've had your genome sequence, if there are any variants that could influence how you would respond to different medication or your risk profile? We also would help there. So having very clear value propositions that we deliver on and getting that positive testimonial and feedback that we've had that impact is essential. That's far more important to us than going out to millions of people in day one. We're saying every person that we help in those first days, we absolutely have to demonstrate our value.
Which career pivots best explain how you got to this point?
Oh, yes, where to begin? So I originally wanted to be an academic. like my father. I'm a mixture of my parents. So my mother is a social worker by training and was very entrepreneurial, had multiple successful jobs. And some companies she set up were successful and others weren't, but we learned from that. And my father was at the same university for over 40 years and was a professor of animal genetics and the vice chancellor of agricultural research. So I have both in me. And I wanted to be an academic like my father, and I quickly learned that wasn't the path for me. Then I went into technology transfer, working at the University of Cambridge, learned about intellectual property rights, spinning out companies, getting them funded, and the importance of translation. And that really hooked me, and I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. I transitioned from that into biotech and ended up at Cambridge Epigenetics as one of the first employees. And Cambridge Epigenetics has now become Biomodal, but that opened my eyes to multi-omics. The idea that your genome is there, but epigenetics is dynamic and gives you so much more information. That kind of qualifier, the dimmer switch on the genome, opened my mind to the power of multi-omics and the importance. And then from there, set up Start Codon, my fund, with my co-founder Dan, and we learned how to grow and scale across multiple companies that we helped build and support those founders from scratch. But it really showed me that I wanted to be an operator, that I understood how the venture raising, how bringing products to market, how biomarker discovery worked, and I wanted to bring all of that together into something I was truly passionate about, and that's how we set up autoimmune.
How has helping other founders shaped how you're building this company?
We have seen that there's a lot of advice we could give from our previous experience, but also we know what it's like for founders today. It is more challenging to raise. The regulatory landscape has changed. AI has been the latest massive disruption to the field. We understand what it takes to secure financing, to secure partnerships with pharma and biotechs, to get products to market, what it means to really demonstrate value, how to grow a team, how to manage a team. These are all things that we honed because doing it for one company is one thing, but doing it across a portfolio of 28 and helping founders with multiple different platform types was another. So it really supercharged our learning, like the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. I feel like we definitely put in our 10,000 hours.
What advice would you give people building in data-rich but biologically messy spaces?
I'd say number one is be very intentional about the type and quality of data that you're building. I think now that AI is becoming increasingly commoditized, everyone is saying, let's look at legacy data sets and we'll derive insights. I think you can to a point, but those data sets and biobanks weren't collected necessarily with AI and the scale that we have in mind. So as you're building these data lakes, think about rubbish in, rubbish out. You've got to be really clear. What are the controls? How are samples taken? How was the data developed? What was the QC and QA that was involved with doing it? And then also be clear on how much you can interpret from that data. Don't overfit. Don't overinterpret. Be very focused. I think a lot of people overpromise and underdeliver. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And also, consent is so important. It's hard to see everything that will happen in the future, but transparent, informed, and understood consent is essential.
If autoimmune succeeds, what will be different for the people you most want to serve 3 to 5 years from now?
I think that we can shorten dramatically the time it takes for somebody to be diagnosed and to get a proper diagnosis. I think that we can really curtail the long trial by error process that goes for a lot of the medications that people are subjected to. I think that we might even be able to help people avoid getting ill in the first place with the right lifestyle changes and preventative measures so that they don't progress into autoimmunity. And I think that earlier detection and earlier intervention, several trials have shown that you get much better outcomes for across the board of multiple different autoimmune conditions. Also, I think that it will be hopefully much more visible. There are multiple patient advocacy groups that we admire and other companies in the space that we're trying to stand on their shoulders and support them as well. I want everybody to be aware of autoimmunity. I don't want anyone to suffer in silence. And I'm hoping that even within the next 3 years, we'll have a significant impact.
So that's very comprehensive, very end-to-end. Where in that autoimmune journey are you most focused right now?
So right now, it is on the detection, to drive for diagnosis, and to help guide people through the early stages of treatment. That's our wedge. So if you're stuck in that 4 to 7 year loop of trying to get a diagnosis, we want to help unstick that. And once you get through to the next phase, we don't want to leave you hanging. We want to say, now that you're in a therapeutic pathway, whatever that treatment pathway may be, we still are holding your hand, and we're going to help you navigate, both understanding what your body is doing, understanding how the meds are impacting you, and then to better work with your clinician to get the care that you deserve. We're not here to diagnose. We're not here to treat ourselves. We're here to increase the connection between the patient and the clinician, make sure that they get the best out of that relationship, and really to help streamline and shorten timelines.
What kinds of signals or data do you think matter most if you want better answers in autoimmune disease?
I think genomics is going to be so essential. There are some isolated things that we do, like HLA typing. Pharmacogenomics is becoming increasingly adopted, but there's so much to be understood from the whole genome, coding and non-coding variants, the structural variants, that impact our immune system in terms of the B cell and T cell repertoire that we develop, and the various receptors that we have on our different innate immune cells. A wide range of things are impacted by us genetically, and I feel that we can't really interpret the standard blood tests that we have in the clinic without having that genetic layer to the full extent that we should. Of course, complete blood counts and CRP and all these other standard biomarkers are very important and very actionable today, but there's a limit when you don't have the genetic underpinnings. So I think the genome piece is really missing. Also, the longitudinality of what we do. Episodic care is necessary but not sufficient. The immune system is being impacted by diet, sleep, stress, exposure to pathogens, and you can get dramatic shifts in a person's immune system that go far and above. You had a test 6 months ago and they'll put you on a course of treatment. So we have to find a better way for people to self-report so we can monitor that change over time, and also make it more affordable and accessible to have the right biomarkers tested, the right biomarkers, inflammatory biomarkers tested at the right time as well.
What's so hard about building in a space like this where symptoms, subtypes, and trajectories are so variable?
I think there's always a cost factor and an implementation factor. We need to make sure that we empower patients to be central to the journey. We need to make sure that the logistics make sense, because it's very rare, especially for those who are adult with autoimmune diseases, that their lives are not carrying on at the same time they're dealing with the condition. So we have to work around families, work schedules. People forget to get their bloods drawn, so they miss their appointments, so they can't get their prescription renewed, and they end up flaring up. There are all these things about just the basics of life not coming together. We're hoping to streamline that as well too. Make it easier for people to record their symptoms, make it easier for them to get through their appointments. Make the baseline strong and robust, so that we can then go to the things that are more advanced, like the multi-omic testing. But even getting the basics right is important.
What role can computation play in this, and where do you think it gets overhyped?
I am very much in the vein of computation, and AI in particular is a tool that we can leverage to make things more efficient, but it does not fully replace the human in the loop when it comes to medical care. So I think that there are a lot of organizations and companies that are trying to say, we're a doctor in your pocket, we will replace the clinician, AI can do it better. We say the opposite. We are more about how can we leverage AI to ease the burden on patients, to help them provide the information that they need to doctors to get the best care possible, to gather the evidence they need to drive diagnosis and further testing. How can we help doctors manage their caseload? They will have a number of patients under their care. How can they better organize and address their needs? That's where AI is powerful. It's a facilitator that can operate at scale and really remove a lot of the hurdles that are blocking the field, but it's not a replacement for humans, at least in this case.
What have you deliberately chosen not to tackle yet?
We've deliberately chosen not to tackle diagnosis because we know that people can have multiple immune conditions, and quite frankly, the old school designations aren't fit for purpose. I've met so many people who've said they've had lupus or rheumatoid arthritis with totally different disease progressions. And you think, is lupus one disease? Is it two? Is it 15? There must be so many subclasses. So for us to get into that realm, we first want to really understand the underlying driving mechanisms behind these disorders, and then start to classify people based on that. That's very much informed by precision oncology. We're moving away from saying breast cancer and liver cancer only, but more into what is the molecular profile of the cancer, how is it responding, what are the drivers. Because there can be breast cancers that look like liver cancer, there could be liver cancers that look like colorectal cancer, even if they weren't derived from that tissue to begin with, because of the molecular patterns we see in the genome and other omics. So I'd like to get to a point where immunology is in that same space, where we are looking at our unique immune system. We take a detailed molecular review as well as the phenotype of the individual, and we say, okay, based upon what we can see, this is what we think is driving your phenotype, and here's the direction of travel, as opposed to I'm diagnosing you with lupus, or I'm diagnosing you with IBD, or I'm diagnosing you with rheumatoid arthritis. There's still a place for that, but before we step into the diagnostic realm, we want to focus on drivers and understanding how we can cluster all the different subtypes of condition.
Where do you think the first real foothold is for the company? Research, clinical workflow, decision support, partnerships, something else?
I think the care journey and clinical decision support is going to be a real big wedge into the market for us. I think when we first started, and I'm very big on informatics. That's my background. I'm big on big data. I naively thought, oh, the multiomics and big data will just solve everything. And then after speaking to patients and clinicians and payer providers and also pharma, you started to realize, wow, there's just a lot of logistical things that we need to sort out first before we even get there. I have always cautioned founders that we invested in at StarCodon that it's very easy to get enamored with your hammer. And you go around telling everybody they've got a nail. And you're just going around bashing around, look at my beautiful hammer. It's like Thor's hammer. It shoots lightning bolts and it's made from platinum. And trust me, I got my multi-omic hammer. And they go, actually, you know what? I just need to make it easier to make an appointment. Or I just need a way to put my symptoms together so when I go to my doctor, I can have a coherent conversation in the 10 minutes I have to get their attention. Those basics, if you don't fix that, no one's talking about the whole genome. So we said, fix that first, and then we can make sure that we unlock the bottleneck towards the multi-omic future.
That makes a lot of sense. What partnerships or collaborators matter most early on for you?
I think, obviously, we are reaching out to patient advocacy groups because they have their finger on the pulse of what the communities need. We are really keen on working with clinicians and hospital care systems to get the best understanding possible of what their pain points are and hopefully leverage them to get more patients and customers using MOA. Also, biotech and pharma. We understand that there are existing data sets and biobanks available. There are also CROs that do things like clinical trial recruitment and a lot of next-gen platforms with AI. But we want to be a go-to partner because we're focused on immunology. We are building from the ground up with that end goal in mind, partnerships, and that we, because of our backgrounds working with pharma and building biotechs, we understand some of the needs. For example, something as simple as knowing that the data you generate, also having a biobank sample so a partner can generate their own data set with their own assay is also important. I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate that. Knowing that the metadata that comes with the sample is so important as well. How is it processed? How is it stored? Who did it come? All these things are like the details that when a partner comes knocking, they say, wait a minute, you didn't have these regulations in place. You didn't have your LIMS set up. Your QMS is all these are things that we've lived through. And so we're building now with that partnership goal in mind.
What milestone over the next 12 to 18 months will matter most for you?
I would say market traction, but not in the sense of volume of users, but more in the testimonials that we've had the impact. That is our full focus now. We'd much rather have a few hundred really dedicated, very intense users who we can show we are categorically changing their lives in a positive way than thinking, oh, let's go for thousands and thousands of early adopters who aren't engaged at all and we're not able to show any impact because they inevitably there will be an attrition and they will drop off. Any investor worth their salt, any business person worth their salt knows that's a false kind of comfort to say, oh, wow, look at the adoption we had early on. You need people who are truly engaged and are really feeling that you're solving a pain point for them. So those are the milestones for us. Get our first cohort of a few hundred really devoted testimonial customers who can go out and say, this works.
What would a thoughtful skeptic need to see before believing the company can make a meaningful difference?
I think first and foremost, they need to talk to somebody who's used our platform and said, okay, this isn't a nice to have, it's essential. I think also they need to know that we have the ability to scale, because starting off with 100 people is one thing, but going from 100 to 100,000 to a million plus is another. So I would say that if I were outside looking in, is this scalable, or is it just a niche thing that you can only do at a very small level? So we need to demonstrate as well scalability.
What part of your scientific training still shows up in how you operate?
Wow. I recently went back into the lab to start tinkering around with some new workflows, because I have an assay development background, particularly from my days at Cambridge Epigenetics Biomodal, and that's been a lot of fun. Took me 2 weeks to get a PCR working, but that's fine. I had support, and a shout out to the wonderful people at O2H Labs in Cambridge. But that is, I think, really important for us too, that we are not just relying on off-the-shelf assays. We are now identified the type of data sets that we want to build and the scalability, and making sure you get robust data. And so we're developing our own proprietary assays. And so since that's my background, it's been a lot of fun to really think through not just a Me Too assay for the sake of it, but one that will generate the data sets at the level that we need affordably to drive our insights engine.
What part of company building did you only learn by doing?
How everything goes wrong. Crisis management. I would say that's it, because
That's fair.
everything you put on paper, everything that ChatGPT tells you and all that wonderful stuff, great. Okay, that's business 101. What you learn by doing is when things go pear-shaped. When you've got an HR issue, or the market shifts, or the experiment didn't work, or a whole host of things, a new competitor pops up, whatever it may be, you learn by doing.
How different does it feel to be in operator mode?
Oh, I love it. It's interesting. It's like when you are doing something that you are happy doing. Like when I was an investor, I was very happy because I love supporting other people. So that did feel really good. But now it's wow. I am back into it just felt like getting back on a bike. It feels so good to be in operator mode again. And although I do continue to support the founders that we backed, and I do continue to do a lot of community work trying to support anybody who's going on this journey themselves, I know this is exactly where I'm meant to be.
What have you had to unlearn from earlier chapters of your career?
I'd say that I have had to unlearn that hard work is the name of the game. When I was growing up, I always had this message, and rightly so from my parents, about work harder, you've got to be a hard worker, you've got to be a hard worker. I learned over the years that you have to be a smart worker. So I always say, work smarter, not harder. How can you leverage your team members? How can you use different platforms to do things more efficiently? What are some things that actually at midnight, there's no point sending that email. In fact, you probably shouldn't. Go get some sleep. These are all things I had to learn over time, that I'm far much more efficient by working smarter than thinking it's just working harder and potentially burning out.
What kind of team are you trying to assemble around this problem at autoimmune?
I am so happy that everybody on the team has lived experience and is really truly passionate. That may not always be the case, but it's something that we're emphasizing. Even for the website, we don't want to use stock photos. We want to use images of people who actually have lived conditions, whether it be a caregiver or a diagnosed immune condition. This is something that's core to the ethos of the company for how we present ourselves and the team that we grow. People who have lived it are super passionate and will stop at nothing to fix it for others. I love that. The other thing is I want to have diversity at the heart of it. I call myself a Jedi, so justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion warrior. It's more fun to say that. So I love being a Jedi, but it's because diversity is the answer. It's not a problem. Too many people think, oh, diversity is a thing and it's all a fad and it's all being woke. And no, categorically we know more inclusive teams that are more diverse win. Every study has shown that. So I want diversity of thought, gender, background, neurodiversity, educational path, you name it, geographical, and we're already very diverse, and I want to maintain that because I love that creative friction where people come at it from different perspectives and different fields.
What do first-time founders underestimate when they build around diagnostics, health data, or precision medicine?
Just how challenging it is to get funded. That sometimes
Especially right
now. Sometimes diagnosis is the ugly stepchild of therapeutics, and a lot of investors will say, so you've got this platform and you can do analytics. Could you use that for drug discovery? And you go, yeah, I could, but they're like, oh, that's interesting. Have you thought about maybe developing an asset pipeline and going to therapeutics? And they tell this to this team of people who are wholly unsuited to go into therapeutics. It's not their background at all. And then they try to pivot, and the next thing you know, they fail, and it's, oh, too bad. I'd say a lot of founders speak to the right investors, speak to the right partners, and build a team for what it is you want to accomplish. Know that it's hard and challenging, but also understand the health economics of the problem you're trying to address, and know that although it's difficult, doesn't mean it's not possible. I think that's the thing. People, they mistake things being challenging or difficult with, is it worth doing? So just because it's harder to get funding, or it's not as sexy an indication, or whatever it may be, if the health economics makes sense, you've got a clear care pathway and a path to market, and it's what you're passionate about, you will find a way. Be creative. Don't think, oh, I'm just not going to do it at all. There's always a way. You just have to rethink about your path and find the right partners and speak to the right people.
What should people validate before they get attached to a solution?
That the problem exists, and also that a solution is worth building. I think the third thing is there's a difference, and I learned this when I was working as a consultant in early days. There's a big difference between want state and need state. So for anybody out there who has children like I do, they may need to eat their vegetables, for example, but do they want to eat their vegetables for dinner tonight? They need to brush their teeth, but do they want to brush their teeth? Do not assume that just because you have something that people need and you spent so much time characterizing that unmet need and you're so clear and you've validated it and you've reinforced yourself and you're running off, do they want it? Will they pay for it?
Very good point. How should a scientist decide if they should found a company, join maybe a startup, or stay in research at a more established organization?
Well, it's a personal decision, but it always starts with introspection. So I tell people you have to be self-aware. It starts within. If you don't understand your personal motivations, if you don't understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, what's your rationale for doing this? You should be running towards something, not away. It can't be, oh, my PI is crazy and I don't want to be a postdoc for life, so I'll go set up a company. Or it also can't be, I want to be in control. There's a great article called The Founder's Dilemma where they talk about, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? King being it's all about control, those companies typically fail. Or rich meaning everybody wants to be successful. Not rich in the monetary sense, that's part of it, but the whole team wants to be successful. So if you're the kind of person who wants everyone to succeed, you have a burning desire to have an impact in the world, pick your lane. It may be a startup, it may be joining somebody else's, it could be in academia. But you've got to decide what it is that you personally want. And then know that you can't do it all. How are you going to build a team around you to pull it off? And where do you best fit? Just because it's your idea doesn't mean that you should be in charge of the company. Just because you've got an idea doesn't mean it's a good one worth pursuing. And be open to the idea or the fact that most people pivot multiple times. So be prepared to actively, objectively pressure test your idea. Seek critical, constructive feedback early and often. I'm always second, triple, quadruple guessing what I'm doing and trying to get people to tell me, no, you're bonking mad. I don't look for people to convince me if I got a good idea. I look for people to convince me that I don't. I think that's some of the most valuable conversations ever, because if you came up with the idea, chances are you already think oh, look at me, I'm clever. I want to go out to people, I'm like, please explain to me why my idea makes no sense. Give me all the reasons why this won't work. Let's talk it through. That's invaluable. Actively seek that feedback.
What question do you wish more people asked about autoimmune disease?
Why is it so prevalent in women? We know that for certain autoimmune conditions, it's roughly 50-50. In some cases, it can skew a bit more towards men in a couple of them. But overall, for the almost 100 different autoimmune conditions that have been diagnosed, 80% of sufferers rather, are women. Some in the past thought perhaps it was due to women going to the doctor and getting diagnosed, but I don't think that's quite it. Maybe that a little bit might be contributing of just who's going and getting diagnosed. I think there's something fundamental about the biology of XX chromosomes and women that is driving this massive disparity between the numbers. And we don't ask enough because women historically have been underserved in the medical community and the research community. A couple of papers have come out with hypotheses, but they haven't really been robustly proven. We need to figure it out instead of just accepting it as is.
What belief are you betting on that more people will agree with in 5 years?
That diagnostics do matter, that they're important, and that early detection and prevention is the future for medicine. Prevention better than cure. Early detection, early intervention, timely detection. These are all things I think we're moving in that direction already, but I feel firmly we're going to wake up one day and realize that's the truth. And also that we as individuals are fully responsible for our health. We cannot assume that somebody else is out there is going to catch us when we fall through the cracks. So to the extent that we can control our diet, our lifestyle, educate ourselves, I think is so important that we're not kept in the dark and that we have the information we need to make informed decisions with our clinicians advising us.
What would delight you most to hear from a patient, clinician, or partner someday?
What would delight me the most would be for them to say, I don't know. And I mean that because I think often, as a patient, you're going to a doctor and you're expecting a definitive answer. And as a doctor, you're hoping that there's going to be some clear diagnosis, some clear treatment pathway. Maybe you follow the guidelines, maybe you go a little off rails, but there's something very definitive. And patients want definitive answers. And then when it's a misdiagnosis or missed diagnosis, people get really upset, rightly, and get really frustrated. I would love for us to be able to have open and honest conversations where people say, I don't know what's causing this, but we're going to figure it out together. That would make me joyful. I think it would mean that there's a cultural shift in the way that we do medicine from learned doctor, ignorant patient going and getting told what's what to, hey, we're a care team working together, and together we're going to figure out what's going on. And we need this data input from you, so you're playing your part, and we've got a capability, so we're playing our part, and together we're going to sort it out.
If we have you back in 3 years, what do you hope we're talking about?
Oh, I hope we're talking in 3 years about the number of precision medicine opportunities that are now mainstream, thanks to AI and the markets opening up and really backing companies like autoimmune and others. We obviously are focused on what we're doing, but there are so many great ideas and amazing teams out there who need support as well. And I would love to come back and talk about all the really cool things that we see in the market and all the amazing advances that are happening. So not just autoimmune doing well, but everybody, because I believe a rising tide lifts all ships.
Jason, thanks so much for taking us inside autoimmune at such an important moment. I like that this conversation gave us both the company story and the founder story, what you're building, why you're building it, and how you're thinking about doing it. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about MOA and immune health, visit moihealth.com. The Bioinformatics CRO provides computational biology services to academics, research institutions, biotechs, and pharmaceutical companies on a flexible hourly basis. Visit our website, bioinformaticscro.com, to learn more.